Let's talk about this with Dr. Alan Mendoza, Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society, an organisation campaigning basically against extremism. Alan, thank you very much for joining us. It is indeed a wonderful day, isn't it?
Yes, it is, Julia. Finally, a wonderful day. For so long, we have had many non-wonderful days, and there's actually a day to be grateful for and to actually celebrate.
Well, indeed. I mean, I'm just absolutely thrilled, having spoken to so many hostages, families, and sadly also those who've lost loved ones, the campaigning they've been doing. How significant is, first of all, Donald Trump's role in this? How significant is it as him personally, the role that he has played to negotiate to get to this point where this deal has taken place today? Whatever happens in the future, that this has happened today.
Well, it's all down to Trump. There's no doubt that he was the magic ingredient that got all the sides, and when I say all the sides, it's not merely Israel and Hamas, but many other sides that had to be brought in, such as the supporters of Hamas and others like that, to get to this point where finally the one thing that we always knew would end the conflict in sort of a military sense, i.e. the return of the hostages, has happened. So, you're right to say we don't know quite how it's going to unfold from here, but for this particular part, he said from day one, the hostages are all coming back. All of them are coming back, and he's got them back. And it was he and his administration who'd made the difference. And
we know that certainly in Hamas and all previous negotiations, drip, 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 you get a few, and then we get a few hundred, of our prisoners, but they call them hostages. They're not hostages. There are detainees, as there are in all wars, and there are people who've been convicted of the most horrific terrorist and murderous attacks and rape even. And there we are, Hamas cheering at getting their criminals back, which is quite in contrast to what's going on in Hostages Square in Tel Aviv right now. In terms of the ability to bang heads together, what was it? Because we're told, Netanyahu, wouldn't do the deal. This deal's been on the table all along. That's simply not true, is it?
Well, I haven't been sitting in on those negotiations, so I can't say what hasn't happened. What I can say is that was there a deal for all the hostages to come back that Netanyahu has refused? Not that anyone in Israel has ever said. So it would seem extraordinary, given that's the one thing the Israelis have demanded from day one. It was never on the table because, as you pointed out, the drip drip was what Hamas needed to keep the leverage that they had from the hostages, i.e. stopping Israel from utterly annihilating them militarily, and secondly, of course, it bought them valuable time to rearm and to regenerate during the conflict. So every time there was a ceasefire pause, it gave Hamas the opportunity to do something. So it's always been in Hamas's interest not to return all the hostages. They've finally been forced into it. And people who say this is Netanyahu being forced into a deal, it's nonsense. The people who have most to lose by this are Hamas. Hamas lose their leverage, and Hamas, in theory at least, are about to lose control of Gaza.
Well, indeed, again, in theory at least. Before we come to that, let's also talk about Keir Starmer. Bridget Phillipson, his education secretary, one of the two, well, probably likely losing candidate for the deputy leadership of the Labour Party, she claimed that the UK, that Keir Starmer had played a vital role. That's why it was a vital role in this deal. This has been poo-pooed rather blatantly and openly and publicly by the US ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, saying that this was delusional. And then we saw a message from Donald Trump's chief negotiator, Steve Witkoff, basically sort of praising Jonathan Powell, his national security advisor, for his key role. But, it is delusional to claim we played anything close to a vital role in this deal.
Well, we didn't play a vital role. The Americans did that. They were the difference. Had it been without the Americans, whatever Jonathan Powell was doing would have achieved zero success. And the reason for that, of course, is that Britain was no longer seen as a power in the Middle East, and B, relevant, because it had made itself quite clearly irrelevant by things like declaring unilateral Palestinian state when one doesn't exist. So once you take sides like that, you lose your relevance, basically. It's only when you maintain that ability to be an honest broker between the sides, as the US has done, that you can actually achieve something. So whatever the UK has done at the margins, it's very much at the margins, and it does not enable us to, take any credit, apart from, of course, from no doubt what the Americans would love us now to do, which is to pay for it all and to put our troops on the ground. It'll be very interesting to see whether Sir Keir, who's so keen to take credit for this, will now go and do what the Americans might want him to do in this regard, because I think that'd be a terrible move for Britain for that to be the case.
Yeah, well, indeed. And this is it. It's nice to be hopeful, and I have to say, for me, getting those hostages back, absolutely vital. But But for me, the chances that Hamas, and they've made it very clear with various other jihadist organisations, along with them saying a statement yesterday, we're not willing to sort of give up power. Everything is predicated on Hamas cannot have a role in the running of any future Palestinian state or parts, or Gaza. Not going to happen, according to the Israelis. But and indeed, according to Trump and this peace deal, which Hamas supposedly have accepted, because they haven't. They've agreed to this phase one and not to the rest of it. The reality is that they're not going to walk away. We've already seen executions, dozens of people executed in, basically fighting between the different clans, different organisations within Gaza. Some of it, filmed and out on social media. Even the BBC has noticed it, for goodness sake, Alan, so it must be real. Do you hold out any hope that we are going to see civilians in Gaza living, anything close to a normal life, bearing in mind they are returning to their homes, but there's not much of their homes left in the rubble at the end of this war?
Well, I think it all comes down again to Donald Trump. What does he want? What is he prepared to achieve, and who is he prepared to pressure in order to guarantee this? Hamas don't operate on their own. They've been supported for a long time by elements within Qatar, elements within Turkey. So it seems to me that there is an obvious way to make Hamas comply by applying pressure to those people, as has obviously been done already to get them to this point, in order to get that deal beyond phase one. If he does exert that pressure, then there's every possibility they will have to comply. If he chooses to back off, then the scenario you've sketched out is likely to be the future of Gaza. And we will not know, of course, who ends up winning that, because you're right to point out that there are local clans, militias who don't want to obey Hamas, who want to sort of strike out their own fiefdoms, who would like to take charge right now. So there could be a very severe civil war, which is why it's important that Hamas is indeed pressured to leave and that a structured replacement is set up so that we know who will actually govern Gaza.
Yeah. And meanwhile, of course, this is all still playing out on our streets here in Britain. Once again on Saturday, after all that's happened, we had more, free Palestine marches, from the river to the sea, Hamas slogans chanted on our streets. And once again, we had the police basically arresting the wrong people. Amazingly, we played a little clip earlier on to some student, apparently at Oxford, of the shame that it brings on my former university, basically talking about, burying Zios in the ground. So, basically killing people for having an opposite view from him. I'm assuming he includes me. And again, happy to debate with him on this. No arrest for him that we're aware of, although we are very much hoping we can make him famous and ensure that he does get his collar felt, because my belief in freedom of speech doesn't extend to people making death threats against people. But we also saw once again, people who were just holding up signs saying, "I stand with Britain's Jews," being arrested by police when people are making the most outrageous shouting violent slogans, holding anti-Semitic placards, and the police do nothing. And this has gone our streets yet again. What do you make of that?
Well, two-tier Britain in action, Julia. Once again, terror among the police, fear about, actually dealing with these people. Who, let's be frank, let's exercise our freedom of speech. They are the scum of the earth.
Yep.
These are the lowest of the low, the very filth of our society that comes out, crawls out of the drains at a time when a ceasefire is there. Yeah. When they've claimed, they've lied about a genocide for all this time. They don't want the genocide to stop, it seems. That's the lunacy of this thing. They are warped, they are twisted, they are frankly evil, Julia. And it's tragic that the law enforcement forces in this country are terrified of such a rabble. They should be in there, they should be smashing heads, they should be locking these people up who are breaking the law quite brazenly in front of us. And that is not happening, and that tells you all you need to know about where this government stands on the law and order question and what is right and what is wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we saw, even on a very different note, but we saw at the weekend as well a march in Tower Hamlets, a fun run in Tower Hamlets, organised by East London Mosque, which was for, a fun run for all the community, except that women were only allowed, or girls were only allowed to take part if they were under the age of 12, but not above the age of 12. So women, so it was all men and boys and a few girls who ran along. And apparently this is just how we're going to live our lives now in this country.
Well, this is an example, isn't it, of totally failed integration. So we've seen this over the last 20 years, time and time again. It's getting worse rather than better. And again, the government won't even call out the problem, let alone do anything about it. And until we have leaders who are willing to call it out and say this is unacceptable in a democratic Britain in 2025, then we are going to have a repeat of all the problems that we've seen, the incitement, the hatred, the chaos, and indeed the extremism, and that will lead this country only one way, and that way is into chaos and disaster.
Well, indeed. Dr. Alan Mendoza, Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society, thank you for that.